March 12, 2023. Canggu, Bali, Indonesia. Sarah Mitchell was 28 years old and tired of her life in Portland, Oregon. She worked in digital marketing, pulled long hours for a tech startup that barely noticed her contributions, and lived in a shared apartment she could barely afford. She spent her evenings scrolling through Instagram, watching other people live the lives she wanted. She never imagined that a sponsored post would lead to her death. The advertisement appeared in her feed on a Tuesday afternoon. A wellness retreat called Sacred Path Sanctuary, nestled in the rice terraces outside Ubud. The photos showed sunrise yoga sessions, healthy meals arranged like art, and testimonials from women who claimed the experience had transformed their entire existence. The founder, a man named David Brennan, stared directly at the camera with intense blue eyes. His bio said he was a former corporate executive who had found enlightenment in Bali and now dedicated his life to helping others find their true purpose. The retreat cost $3,500 for 2 weeks. Sarah had $4,100 in her savings account. "This is absolutely insane," her roommate Katie said when Sarah showed her the website. "You're going to blow your entire savings on some guru in Bali?" Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, a small rebellion. "I need this," she said. "I need something to change." Katie studied her face for a long moment. She would later tell investigators that she saw something in Sarah's expression that worried her, a kind of desperation. "Just promise me you'll be careful," Katie said. "These wellness things can be weird." Sarah promised. She booked her flight that night. The retreat was scheduled to begin on April 3rd. Sarah spent 3 weeks preparing, buying linen clothing and a new yoga mat, reading books about mindfulness and spiritual awakening. She gave her notice at work. Her manager seemed relieved rather than disappointed. That should have told her something about her future there. But Sarah was already gone in her mind, already in Bali, already transformed. She arrived at Ngurah Rai International Airport on April 2nd after 24 hours of travel. The humidity hit her like a wall when she stepped outside. A driver held a sign with her name on it. He was young, maybe 25, and spoke limited English. "Sacred Path?" he asked. Sarah nodded. She climbed into the van, which already held 2 other women. They introduced themselves as Jessica and Amanda, both Americans, both in their early 30s. Jessica was a yoga instructor from Austin. Amanda worked in pharmaceutical sales in Chicago and looked exhausted in a way Sarah recognized. "First time in Bali?" Jessica asked. "First time anywhere like this?" Sarah admitted. The drive took 2 hours, winding through traffic and then into increasingly rural areas. The rice terraces were as beautiful as the photos had promised. The van turned onto a narrow dirt road and climbed into the hills. The Genam, Sacred Path Sanctuary, sat on 5 acres of jungle property, surrounded by a tall bamboo fence. David Brennan himself greeted them at the entrance. He was 51 years old, though he looked younger in person than in his photos. Deeply tanned, muscular in the way that suggested serious dedication to fitness, wearing white linen pants and no shirt. His gray-blue eyes moved from woman to woman as he welcomed them. "You've taken the first step on a profound journey," he said. His voice was soft but commanding. "By coming here, you've already demonstrated courage that most people never find." Sarah felt something warm spread through her chest. She wanted to believe him. The compound consisted of 6 small bungalows arranged around a central pavilion. A yoga platform stood at the edge of a steep hillside, overlooking the jungle canopy. Everything looked exactly like the Instagram posts. David explained that they would have no Wi-Fi or cell service during the retreat. This was intentional, part of the disconnection from the toxic modern world. Your phones will be kept in the office, David said. Return to you each Sunday for 1 hour to contact family if needed. This is for your protection, your transformation. That seems excessive, Amanda said carefully. David smiled at her. The warmth didn't reach his eyes. I understand the resistance, he said. The ego always resists change. But ask yourself, what are you really afraid of? What are you holding on to? Amanda handed over her phone. The first 3 days followed a rigid schedule. Wake at 5:30 a.m., meditation until 7, breakfast of tropical fruit and something David called activated porridge, yoga from 8 to 10, free time until lunch, afternoon workshop on topics like releasing ancestral trauma and awakening your divine feminine, evening meditation, dinner, bed by 9 p.m. Sarah's bungalow was simple but clean. A thin mattress on a wooden platform, mosquito netting, a small bathroom with a cold water shower. She shared the space with Jessica, who snored softly and seemed genuinely at peace with the experience. David is amazing, Jessica said on the third night. I can already feel my energy shifting. Sarah wasn't sure what she felt. Tired mostly. The heat was oppressive. The food portions were small. David led all the workshops himself, and his teachings seemed to shift depending on his mood. One session focused on gratitude and abundance. The next was about how women had been conditioned to doubt their intuition, to ignore the wisdom of their bodies. You've been taught to please others, David said during an afternoon talk, to make yourself smaller, to apologize for taking up space. Here, we undo that programming. The 6 women in the retreat nodded along. Besides Sarah, Jessica, and Amanda, there were 3 others: Natalie from Germany, Claire from Australia, and Marissa from Canada, all of them between 25 and 35. All of them searching for something they couldn't quite name. On the 4th day, David started giving private consultations. He called it shadow work. One-on-one sessions where he would help each woman confront her deepest fears and limitations. Sarah's session was scheduled for the afternoon of April 7th. She found herself both nervous and excited. David seemed to see something in her that others missed. He had started calling her warrior spirit during group sessions, telling her she had untapped potential. The consultation took place in David's personal bungalow, which was larger and better furnished than the others. He gestured for Sarah to sit on a cushion on the floor. He sat across from her, close enough that their knees almost touched. "Tell me why you're really here," he said. Sarah talked for nearly an hour. About feeling invisible at work, about watching her friends get married and buy houses while she struggled to pay rent, about her mother's constant questions about when she would settle down, about feeling like she was failing at being an adult. David listened with complete attention. He didn't interrupt. When she finally stopped talking, he reached out and took both her hands. "You're not broken," he said. "You're just asleep. And I can help you wake up." His thumbs traced circles on her palms. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. This felt like something more than therapy. "The transformation we do here requires complete trust," David continued. "Complete surrender. Can you give me that?" Sarah heard herself say yes. What she didn't know was that David Brennan had been running similar retreats for 3 years. What she didn't know was that there had been complaints. 2 women who claimed he had been inappropriate, one who said she had been held against her will for an extra week. But the complaints existed only on obscure internet forums, places Sarah had never thought to look. "Good," David said, releasing her hands. "Then we can begin the real work." The shift happened gradually over the next week. David started separating Sarah from the group, giving her additional private sessions, telling her she was progressing faster than the others, that she had a special receptivity to the teachings. He introduced new practices, breathing exercises that left her dizzy, meditation sessions that stretched for hours. A special tea, he said, would help her access deeper states of consciousness. "How do you feel?" Jessica asked one morning after Sarah had missed breakfast for the third day in a row. "Different," Sarah said. "Good, I think." She wasn't sure that was true. She felt unmoored, like reality had become flexible around the edges. David said this was normal. This was the ego dissolving. The other women were scheduled to leave on April 17th. Their 2 weeks were complete. But David pulled Sarah aside the night before. "You're not ready to go back yet," he said. "You've barely scratched the surface of your transformation. Stay another 2 weeks. I'll waive the fee." "I need to get back," Sarah said. "I have job applications out, and Katie is expecting me." David's expression hardened for just a moment before softening again. "The old life is calling you back," he said. "The safe life, the small life. Is that really what you want?" Sarah felt tears start. She was exhausted. The tea David gave her made her sleep poorly, filled with anxious dreams. "I'll think about it," she said. "Don't think," David replied. "Feel. What does your body tell you?" That night, Sarah used her 1 hour of phone access to call Katie. The connection was poor, crackling with static. "Thank God," Katie said when she answered. "I've been worried sick. You've barely responded to my texts." "We only get phones for an hour on Sundays," Sarah explained. There was a long pause. "Sarah, that's not normal. That's actually really concerning." "It's fine," Sarah said, but her voice sounded uncertain, even to herself. "David says it's part of disconnecting from—" "Who the fuck is David?" Katie interrupted. "Sarah, listen to me. You sound weird. You sound different. When are you coming home?" "I might stay longer," Sarah heard herself say. "There's more work to do." "No," Katie said firmly. "Your flight is in 3 days. Come home. We'll figure everything else out, but come home." Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. A moment of clarity. "You're right," she said. "I'll be on the flight, April 19th. I'll text you when I land." She felt better after the call, more solid. She would leave with the others. She would go home. But when she tried to return to her bungalow, David was waiting outside. "I need to speak with you," he said. What happened next would be reconstructed later through the testimony of the other women and through fragments of evidence found at the scene. But in the moment, Sarah Mitchell had no way of knowing she had just made the last phone call of her life. David led her not to his bungalow, but to a separate building deeper in the property, past the yoga pavilion and into the jungle. Sarah followed. She still trusted him, still believed he had her best interests at heart. "I heard your phone call," David said when they were inside. The building was small, just one room with a locked door, no windows. "I'm disappointed, Sarah. We were making such progress." "I need to go home," Sarah said. Her voice shook slightly. "My friend is worried." David's expression changed completely. The gentle guru vanished. What replaced it was cold and calculated. "You're not leaving," he said simply. "You have more to learn." He locked the door from the inside. The key disappeared into his pocket. Sarah felt her pulse spike. This wasn't spiritual anymore. This was something else entirely. "David, this isn't funny. Let me out." He stepped closer. Sarah backed against the wall. "You're experiencing resistance," David said in that same soft voice he used during workshops. "This is your ego fighting the transformation. You need to surrender. Let me out, Sarah said again, louder now. David's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was painful. I've invested too much in you, he said. You're not leaving until you understand what I'm offering you. Sarah tried to pull away. David slapped her hard across the face. The shock of it froze her for a moment. Don't make this difficult, he said. That was when Sarah started screaming. Jessica Hart heard the screams from her bungalow. She would later testify that she thought it was part of some exercise at first. David had led them through primal scream therapy 2 days earlier. But this sounded different. This sounded wrong. We need to check on that, Jessica said to Amanda, who was packing her suitcase for the morning departure. They walked toward the sound. The sun was setting, turning the jungle gold and orange. They found the small building past the yoga platform. The door was locked. The screaming had stopped. Sarah, Jessica called through the door. No response. Amanda tried the handle. Locked. This is fucked up, Amanda said. We need to get help. But help was 2 hours away, and their phones were still locked in David's office. Jessica made a decision. She ran back to the main compound and demanded her phone from David's assistant, a local woman named Wyan, who seemed permanently anxious. Wyan refused at first, but Jessica pushed past her into the office and grabbed her own phone from the lockbox. I'm calling the police, Jessica said. Wyan's eyes went wide with something that looked like relief. Jessica's phone had no signal. She had to walk almost half a kilometer down the dirt road before she found enough service to make a call. The Balinese police dispatcher spoke limited English. Jessica struggled to explain the situation. A wellness retreat, a locked building, screaming that had stopped. The police said they would send someone. It could take several hours. The location was remote. Jessica walked back to the compound. It was fully dark now. Amanda had found a rock and was trying to break the lock on the door. The other women had gathered. Claire was crying. Natalie was filming on her phone, some instinct for documentation kicking in. David, Amanda shouted at the locked door. We know you're in there. Open this door right now or we're breaking it down. No response. They broke a window instead. The glass shattered inward. Jessica climbed through, cutting her arm in the process. Amanda followed. The room was dark. Jessica found a light switch. Sarah Mitchell was on the floor, not moving. Blood pooled beneath her head where it had struck the concrete. David Brennan sat against the wall, his white linen pants splattered with red. He looked up at them with no expression at all. She wouldn't surrender, he said quietly. Jessica screamed. The investigation that followed revealed a pattern that stretched back years. David Brennan's real name was David Morris. He had founded Sacred Path Sanctuary after being fired from his job at a hedge fund in New York for sexual harassment. He had multiple complaints against him from previous retreats. 2 women had filed reports with police in Denpasar, but the cases had stalled due to jurisdictional complications and language barriers. Detective Ketut Arjana from the Gianyar Police Department led the investigation into Sarah's death. He had seen cases like this before. Foreign men who came to Bali, opened spiritual businesses, and preyed on vulnerable women. These retreats exist in a gray area. Detective Arjana later explained to reporters, they're not regulated, no oversight. And the victims often don't report because they're embarrassed or confused about what happened. The autopsy showed that Sarah had died from blunt force trauma to her skull. The medical examiner determined she had been struck repeatedly against the concrete floor. Toxicology reports found high levels of datura in her system, a plant that causes hallucinations and disorientation. David had been putting it in the special tea he gave her. He was drugging her to make her more compliant, Detective Arjana said. This was not spiritual practice. This was predation. The other women provided statements. Jessica described how David had isolated Sarah over the course of the retreat. Amanda talked about the locked door policy for phones, how they had felt uneasy but convinced themselves it was normal. Claire mentioned that she had felt uncomfortable during her private session with David, that he had touched her in ways that seemed inappropriate, but she had dismissed it as part of the healing process. We wanted so badly to believe he could help us, Claire said in her statement. That made us ignore obvious warning signs. Wyan, David's assistant, finally spoke to police after years of silence. She described other women who had been held at the retreat beyond their scheduled departure dates. She talked about seeing bruises on 2 women, but being too afraid to intervene. She explained that David had paid her well and threatened to report her to immigration if she caused problems. I knew something was very wrong, Wyan said, but I needed the money. I'm ashamed now. David Brennan was arrested on April 17, 2023. He showed no remorse during questioning. He maintained that Sarah's death was an accident, that she had become hysterical and injured herself during a healing crisis. The physical evidence contradicted this entirely. The trial took place in Denpasar District Court over 6 months. Indonesian prosecutors charged David with premeditated murder. His defense team argued manslaughter, claiming Sarah's death was accidental during a spiritual session that went wrong. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic psychologist who testified for the prosecution, explained the dynamics of coercive control that existed at the retreat. These environments create intense psychological pressure, Dr. Chen told the court. The isolation, the sleep deprivation, the special diet, the drugs disguised as medicine. These are classic techniques of coercive control. Mr. Brennan created conditions where these women couldn't think clearly or trust their own judgment. The prosecution presented evidence of David's financial motives as well. He had been deeply in debt. The retreat was failing. Several of the women he had detained previously had paid additional money to leave, essentially extortion disguised as voluntary donations. This was not about spirituality, Prosecutor Maid Surya argued in his closing statement. This was about power and money. Sarah Mitchell came to Bali seeking transformation. David Brennan saw an opportunity to exploit that vulnerability. When she tried to leave, he killed her. On November 3, 2023, David Brennan was found guilty of murder. He was sentenced to 15 years in Karabokan prison. Sarah's parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell, attended the sentencing. They had flown to Bali 4 times during the investigation and trial. Linda Mitchell addressed the court through tears. My daughter was searching for meaning, Linda said. She wanted to be better, to feel more alive. And someone exploited that desire in the worst possible way. Sarah should be home right now. She should be starting over, trying again, living her life. Instead, we buried her. Instead, she's gone. The Mitchells filed a civil suit against the Sacred Path Sanctuary and recovered some financial damages, though nothing could compensate for their loss. They use the money to start a foundation that provides resources to help people research wellness retreats before attending. If we can prevent this from happening to even one other person, Robert Mitchell said, then maybe some tiny piece of good can come from this tragedy. Jessica Hart still struggles with what she witnessed that night. She's been in therapy since returning to Austin. She hasn't practiced yoga since. I keep thinking about all the moments I could have done something different. Jessica said in an interview 6 months after the trial. I saw Sarah getting more isolated. I saw her looking thinner and more confused. I asked if she was okay, but I didn't push. I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to disrespect the process. She paused, choosing her words carefully. That's what these people count on. They count on us being polite, on us doubting ourselves, on us thinking we're the problem when we feel uncomfortable. Sarah's death taught me that discomfort is information. When something feels wrong, it probably is. Amanda quit her pharmaceutical sales job and went back to school for social work. She now works with victims of coercive control and abuse. I think about Katie's question a lot, Amanda said. Who the fuck is David? That's what she asked Sarah on the phone. And Sarah didn't have a good answer because she didn't really know him. None of us did. We just wanted him to be who he claimed to be. The Casa, other women from that retreat, have all moved on with their lives in different ways. Claire started a blog about predatory wellness practices. Natalie returned to Germany and became an advocate for stronger regulation of spiritual retreats. Marissa stopped traveling internationally and focused on building community in her hometown in Canada. Katie Torres, Sarah's roommate, was the one who pushed for the investigation when Sarah missed her scheduled flight. She contacted the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta and demanded action. She organized Sarah's memorial service in Portland and kept her friend's memory alive. Sarah was smart and funny and so fucking kind, Katie said. She deserved better than this. She deserved a world where she could search for meaning without getting killed. I think about her every single day. The Sacred Path Sanctuary was shut down by Indonesian authorities. The property was sold. The bamboo fences were torn down. The yoga platform overlooking the jungle was dismantled. Other foreign-owned wellness retreats in Bali faced increased scrutiny and inspection. But Detective Arjana knows the problem persists. For every retreat that gets shut down, 2 more open. Bali is seen as a spiritual destination, he explained. That attracts both genuine seekers and predators who know how to exploit them. We try to regulate, but the laws haven't caught up to the reality. These operations move quickly. They exist in shadows. The case drew international attention. Major news outlets covered the trial. Documentary filmmakers approached the survivors. The story became a cautionary tale, shared widely on social media with warnings about unregulated wellness tourism. But underneath all the coverage and commentary, there remains Sarah Mitchell herself. 28 years old, daughter, friend, woman who wanted more from life than what she had, who saved up money and took a chance, who trusted someone who didn't deserve that trust. Her gravestone in Portland's Riverview Cemetery is simple. Just her name, her dates, and a line from a poem she loved. She wasn't lost. She was exploring. Katie visits once a month. She brings flowers and talks to Sarah like she's still there. She tells her about life in Portland, about the job she finally got, about the apartment she can afford now. Sometimes she cries. Sometimes she just sits quietly and remembers her friend. I wish I could have stopped her from going, Katie said during one of these visits. But Sarah was stubborn. Once she made up her mind, that was it. And I understand why she went. I get why she wanted something different. The world we live in is hard. It makes sense that people are searching. She adjusted the flowers and stood up. I just wish she'd found what she was looking for, instead of finding David fucking Brennan. The sun was setting over Portland, painting the sky the same colors that had lit up Bali on that terrible evening. Katie walked back to her car and drove home. Life continued. It always does. But somewhere in the cascade of social media posts and sponsored advertisements and promises of transformation, other women were scrolling. Other women were feeling that same desperate need for change. Other women were seeing photos of beautiful retreats in exotic locations. And somewhere, people like David Brennan were waiting. The pattern continues. The warnings are there for those who look. The question is whether anyone will see them in time.